Ugh, allergies are killing me anyway. Yep, thunderbolts. I used to appreciate Marvel. But right when I was about to finally leave Marvel for artsy fare, or at the very least for DC, love you James Gunn, after experiencing disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, right when I was finally done with Marvel and was planning on seeing Sinners again instead, Thunderbolts turned out to be good, actually. I'm still gonna see Sinners again, but you know. Yes, like a moth to a flame or a college student to their local boba stand, I returned to Marvel. What can I say? I wanted to hear Florence Pugh's Russian accent, and this time I was rewarded for my efforts. Thunderbolts might not be a true return to form. I don't want to set expectations too high. It's not going to live up to the very peak of Marvel like Guardians of the Galaxy or Black Panther, and it is certainly not an Infinity War. No. To some extent, Thunderbolts still feels less like a movie and more like a television episode, in the way the story is not entirely self-contained or fully satisfying in a vacuum, and in the way that the movie doesn't really have an identity all on its own. But Thunderbolts does feel like a very good and, dare I say, even prestigious episode of television, avoiding many of the studio's recent shortcomings while embracing its strengths. Dare I say, Thunderbolts even did something kind of new. Thunderbolts is, in pretty much every way, a better version of Captain America: Brave New World. I'm not going to spoil any of the plot points, and I will stick strictly to what is shown in the trailers. After all, I am recommending that you see this movie, because this is the kind of film I would like to see more of from Marvel. But I will say this, I do feel as though Thunderbolts was more ambitious than what I was expecting. While Brave New World felt like it wanted to have political commentary, but ended up being too vague or non-committal to stick the landing, Thunderbolts tackles serious issues like depression and mental health in a way that, sure, might come across as a bit cheesy at points, but didn't feel cheap or all that watered down. There is an emotional through line that did ultimately hit by the end, and I think it fits in very nicely with the action and the superhero elements that Marvel fans go for. Despite what the trailers are low-key trying to make you think, Thunderbolts is not an A24 film, and you're not going to see that level of introspection, but I also don't think it's fair to go into a Marvel movie expecting an A24-like experience. That's like drinking a Pepsi and complaining that it isn't wine. Thunderbolts tailors these serious themes for its expected audience, ultimately putting fun first, but still having something to say, and I'm perfectly satisfied by the mature way the team decided to pull that off here. I will say, just like Brave New World just a few months ago, the trailers might give you the wrong impression about what this movie is. There's not very much action at all, and all of the grand supervillain stuff you see here doesn't really happen until much later on. Again, I can foresee that potentially disgruntling some people, but I for one was not disgruntled, I was perfectly gruntled. Again, unlike Brave New World, Thunderbolts was not relying on those few action scenes, and you are still in for plenty of surprises, even if the movie ultimately chooses to go in a different direction. That is not to say the action and spectacle is a non-starter. No, Thunderbolts is very refreshing when it comes to its filmmaking, relying far more on practical effects than CGI slop. The trailers will have you fooled, but there is an actual weight to the action here that is simply not present in other recent Marvel movies. You can sink your teeth into sequences, actual sequences, hallelujah, that are not only entertaining for the masses, but interesting to chew on from an artistic level if you're a freak who's into that kind of thing. Thunderbolts especially makes good use of long takes that added a bit of extra fun for me, making it clear at all times where all our characters are, and keeping us guessing on what they will do next. As a result, the action feels real, largely because it kind of is. I especially love that one fight scene in the middle, but if you want to see Florence Pugh do stunts, you will be gripped from the start. Again, not setting expectations too high. This isn't Denis Villeneuve or anything like that, but I think the directing here is a significant improvement, and the team here really made flips, kicks, and guns way more interesting than the super suits and laser beams of their contemporaries. Do I sound pretentious? I don't mean to sound pretentious. I'm complimenting the movie. They did a good job. However, I do have issues. Mainly, Thunderbolts is kind of let down by the titular Thunderbolts. The superhero team themselves kind of feels like an afterthought if I'm being honest. I was compelled by many of the individual characters, don't get me wrong. I really liked Yelena, I liked the Red Guardian, and I'll always opt in for Sebastian Stan's Bucky Barnes on my screen. I liked Bob. But this is not like the Guardians of the Galaxy or even the Avengers films. In those movies, you not only feel satisfied with the individual characters and their journeys, but you embrace the origin of the teams and understand why they ultimately come together. It was circumstances that brought these different characters together, and it is circumstance that pretty much keeps them together, like D&D characters meeting at a tavern before getting whisked away on their adventure. I did not glean any sort of significant bond amongst them, other than Yelena and her father, obviously, which benefited from setup in previous movies, and still felt like the most fully fledged out relationship here. Not to mention, there are some characters who just kind of felt like extra salad dressing, leftovers stuffed into the movie because we needed to expand the cast, not because we were particularly interested in exploring them. Like Ghost, who is cool, but doesn't have any sort of arc. Bootleg Captain America, who seems like he's gonna have an arc until he just sort of stops arcing.
Give me a kiss, father.
And I hate to admit it, but even Bucky Barnes' Winter Soldier feels out of place. It feels as though the studio was too afraid to have a movie just about Yelena, so we just had to pack in a bunch of random names, regardless of whether or not they fit or whether we even wanted to see them again. Thunderbolts very clearly wants to leave a legacy with which Marvel can later build other stories, but I don't think it succeeds. However, these shortcomings may affect Thunderbolts as a franchise installment, but as an individual product, it still holds strong. The supplemental characters might feel invisible, but at least they don't get in the way, and the stuff that worked, I think, really worked. I adored Florence Pugh in this movie, and I don't think I was disinvested in a Marvel character since Peter Parker in Spider-Man No Way Home. A lot of it is the performance naturally. She comes across as naturally charismatic while still being framed as a believable underdog in a world filled with crazy bullshit. Yelena here is what Sam Wilson should have been in Brave New World. I'm sorry, I keep flagging that movie, I'm just still so mad.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are.
All in all, Thunderbolts was the kind of movie I have been wanting to see out of Marvel for a while, and honestly, I'm kinda surprised it was Thunderbolts of all films, the movie I described privately to my friends as Suicide Squad at Home, that delivered this. Hey, I was wrong, but there are worse things to be wrong about. I hope I've made it clear that I'm not one of those people who will dismiss a Marvel movie simply because it's a superhero film, or because it's a franchise film, or because it's not a 10 out of 10. I understand that different movies do different things. I wasn't looking for anything spectacular, or overly introspective, or indie. I just want to maintain some level of quality control here, and while I will continue to criticize a big studio for falling short, I will also give props when it lives up to my expectations. Thunderbolts, asterisk, yes, earned asterisk, is a good movie, and that's all I want. If you like this video, please give it a little like and a comment and a ring-ding-bing of the little bell icon down at the bottom, please. Thank you very much.